Welcome to the Dr. Lamb Show. I'm Dr. Carrie Lamb, and I have Amy White here with me. We're going to talk about insulin resistance, how to stop your sugar cravings, and how to go from pre-diabetes to not having diabetes. So a lot of metabolic nutrition that we're going to be talking about. Amy is a board certified holistic nutritionist and functional nutrition lifestyle practitioner. She's worked as a nutritionist for over 12 years, including health and weight loss coach. And during this time, she's really come to understand that most health and body weight issues are actually due to communication problem. And once proper communication with the body is restored, excellent health and happy body weight can be the natural result of living and enjoying everyday life. So, welcome, Amy. We're so glad to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's so awesome to talk to people who are like-minded. And I do see you do holistic nutrition, which is something that we've really done for a long time. But I like to
Mhm.
always ask our guests, how they came to this path of doing integrative functional medicine.
I got into sort of the nutrition world in my early 40s, and it was through, I knew nothing about it. I didn't even know what a nutritionist was until my daughter had some gut issues. And then we kind of had to figure that out ourselves. And so that took me down this rabbit hole. And I read everything I could read. And I finally said to my husband, I'm going to have to go back to school because I need to know everything. And of course, there's never any way to learn everything, but you just keep learning. So that's what I did. And it was great. My daughter is very healthy and well, and now I have grandkids and they're healthy.
Oh,
But it
great.
was an interesting moment in time for me because in my late 30s, was, not comfortable. I had sort of hit that point in my life where my kids were older and I had that moment to stop and kind of evaluate and be like, look at who was in the mirror and go, wow, I don't even know this person. I don't feel good. I don't look good. I don't know what's going on. I'm not fun to be around, moody. Um, so in the process of getting my nutrition degree, I realized um, how food impacts the body and realized what had been going on with my body and how I ended up in my late 30s and early 40s just feeling horrible. And
Hmm.
so that was cool because then I was able to shift that for myself. And so now in my mid 50s, way healthier, way happier. I think I'm more fun to be around than I certainly was in my late 30s, kind of
Uh-huh.
that time in life when you should be
Yes.
kind of at your best.
Hmm.
So I see people, and I've seen people in their late 30s who have said to me, I know my best years are behind me, but I just don't want it to get worse. And I remember
Mm.
thinking,
That's
no, no,
sad.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no, it doesn't have to be that way. And certainly that
Yes.
is not the case.
Right.
You have to kind of know how to help your own body.
Yeah. So how did you come out of it, or how do you help
Well, it
people
was
come
a
out of it?
question.
Hmm.
So you mentioned that whole communication problem. So
Hmm.
food is information. And so I always say you have to think of your body as this very obedient 3-year-old. They take everything very literally.
Hmm.
So food is information. So what you're feeding your body, what you're eating is telling your body very specific things. And so even though I thought I was eating well, and I was eating all the right things and doing all the right stuff, my body was getting this message that I needed to conserve energy. I needed to feel tired, sit still, eat
Listening to your
often.
body, you're saying.
Yeah. So
Yes, yes.
it was giving my body all these signals. Hold on to body
Right.
fat. Make sure you eat every hour and a half to 2 hours,
Yes.
all that. That's what the food I was eating was telling my
Hmm.
body. And I was eating healthy food. I always have loved vegetables, tons of fruit, tons of grains. I was snacking on, granola bars and rice cakes and all these great things. And
Hmm.
these are all foods that convert very quickly to sugar in your body.
Mm.
And if you are just primarily running on sugar as your fuel source, you're going to be in a situation where you're not going to be able to really burn body fat, and you're going to have these highs and lows. So that
Right.
would be where the mood swings came from. And that's where
Right.
the energy crashes come from.
Hmm.
Sleep is pretty lousy, and you're constantly hungry, just hungry all
Yes.
the time. So that's what was going
Angry.
on. So I
Yes.
had to kind of switch it up and understand, well, what foods are going to actually make me feel full? Which foods are going to make sure I have lots of energy all day? How am I going to sleep better? So that's what
Mm.
happens. So I figured out how to do that.
Yeah, so that's very common in people that we talk to, that sugar cravings or the feeling hungry, we call it reactive hypoglycemia. Every two
Exactly.
hours, they feel like they have to eat. And so we do tell them, hey, vegetables are great, but the sugar, the carbs, they spike your insulin. And when you
Mhm.
spike your insulin, that's what makes you have a sugar crash because the insulin actually draws all the sugar into your cells really quickly, making you hungry again, right?
Right.
So that biochemistry of saying that your body is saying I'm hungry is basically because you have a sugar crash from eating too
Right.
much sugar. So does that
Exactly.
mean eating the sugar with some protein or not sugar, but complex carbs like vegetables, even you can burn through really quickly? Does it mean eat it with protein or good fats? What do you recommend?
So I never like to see carbs and fats together. So it's very interesting. I have really transitioned. Um, for a long time, I was paleo and then I was low carb and then I did keto. And so that I look at dietary principles as this spectrum. And you can slide around on the spectrum. Now, if you're somebody who's dealing with chronically high insulin levels, so pre-diabetic, maybe a type 2 diabetic,
Hmm.
and you come to me, then I'm going to look at this spectrum of dietary principles and I'm going to be like, okay, based on what's going on with you, I'm going to want to start over here. So this is somebody who I would start over at keto or low carb because we have to
Mm-hmm.
bring those blood sugars down. We have to manage that insulin.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean that you can't slide on this scale once you get healthy, reach your body and health goals. Because maybe they have a weight loss goal as well. Maybe it's not just lab markers and how they're feeling. Maybe they also want to change body composition. So there's other things going on there. Um, I also find that it depends on how long somebody has been insulin resistant, how long they've been pre-diabetic or been type 2 diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, if it's been a long enough time, you don't have a lot of wiggle room on that scale. You may actually have to manage those sugars always and keep that carbohydrate level pretty low. But
Mm.
other people can, once they get healthy, they have some play. So I've actually gotten to a place where I am very much a proponent of protein, especially
Mm-hmm.
as women age, even
Mm-hmm.
men. People do not eat enough protein.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like to have a protein target. And then this is once my clients get healthy and we're done with the sugar cravings. First things first,
Mm.
you have to manage the sugar cravings.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then once that's taken care of, then I like to look at carbohydrates and fats on a seesaw. Some people feel more satisfied and comfortable with more fat in their diet, in which case, then we'd have those carbohydrates lower. Other people are going to feel a little bit better with more carbohydrate and a little bit lower fat. So,
Mm.
it used to be
So
that
it's
I'd
not
be like,
blanket, it's not a blanket, right? Everything is
right.
personalized, right,
It's
to each
it
person.
very much so. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, it varies from day to day. Sometimes, I'll wake up and I'll just know it's going to be a higher fat day because I just want
Mm-hmm.
some bacon, and other days I'm like, oh, I just want an apple and I want a big salad. And so that's more of a higher carb day. And
Mm.
naturally, if you're eating higher carbohydrates, those are generally low fat foods. So when it comes to carbohydrates and fats, you kind of think of them on a seesaw. So typically higher fat foods are generally low in carbohydrate and higher carbohydrate foods are generally low in fat. So what you don't want to do is kind of take maybe a high carb day where you're adding some sweet potato and or some squash or lots of maybe some more extra fruit and that kind of stuff and add a bunch of fat on top of it. So you don't want to
Mm.
have these boiled white, little boiled red potatoes. Don't smash them up and throw a bunch of butter and sour cream on them.
Mm.
If
Mm.
you eat a little boiled red potato plain, it is like candy. It is so sweet all by itself. It doesn't need all
Ah.
that extra fat. Um, so anyway, this is something that I play around with clients. We
Mm-hmm.
prioritize the protein, and this is a target. So protein is the target. And then we sort of, play around with those carbs and those fats. But
Mm.
you know, that's kind of at stage two. It's always going to be balancing metabolic hormones. So first, where's your blood sugar? Where's your insulin? Where are those sugar cravings? Because that's going to be the bigger indication of
Yeah.
kind of what's going on
And
with the.
how would you say you balance people's sugar cravings or help them deal with the sugar cravings?
Well, it's not a quick fix. It's a
No way.
process.
Yes, of
And you
course.
have to be willing to go there. So, sure, I can throw food lists at people. I can throw recipes at them. I can say, eat this. Here's a menu plan. But you know what? That's not really what's going to work for people. They need to understand what's going to work for them. So I like to really start with small little steps. Like, let's make some little tiny, let's call it food policy changes. So what
Mm.
are some of the things that you do that are kind of working against you? And I can use myself as an example. I overeat. I
Mm.
I eat the right food, but I eat a lot of it. And I
Mm.
have little food sort of scripts that sort of without realizing it cause me to do that. And one of those scripts would be, oh, if I sit down in front of the television with food, I am going to eat way more than I normally would because I'm not thinking about it. So I
Right.
together my newest food policy, which is no food in front of the television.
Mm-hmm.
So I take my dinner, I sit at the table, I eat dinner, and then I can go watch TV, but no snacks and no food in front of the television. And that little tiny thing right there, helps me not overeat. So
Right.
stuff like that. There's all kinds
Mindful,
of,
right?
yeah.
Mindful eating.
Well,
Hmm.
mindful for a second, I just created a food policy so
Yeah.
that I could be mindless, right? So I can
Ah.
just eat without having to think, did I overeat? Well, no, in this instance, I'm not overeating because I'm now done. I've set my boundaries.
Yeah.
So I like to get to mindless. Like, let's make as many automatic actions as we can so they're simple. But um, for
That's a
people
good
trying to
one.
get off sugars, there's this
Mhm.
whole, I do a lot of like, what can we use for, how do we swap? How can we use different types of sweeteners, different types of flours? What can we do to convert recipes that you like that work in your life? So now they're going to work better for your body.
Ah.
So
Hmm.
the sooner, the more we do
Substitutions, right? To substitute.
substitutes, yeah, substitution.
Mm.
So the more we can do that, the faster you kind of come off the sugar high and those cravings. And then all of
Hmm.
a sudden everything gets way easier because you're
Mm.
not hunting down that kind of food anymore and you're feeling better about, eating more protein and more of the veggies and that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
but
What are
little
some
things.
most common substitutions that people really love?
Well, I have a treat don't cheat guide, and so
Oh,
that's full
okay.
of desserts. So I think my
Ah.
treat don't cheat guide has 6 different desserts, and so in there you learn what an alternative sweetener is, what alternative flours are, what does that mean, right? So instead
Hmm.
of using regular white flour, you're going to use almond flour or coconut flour, or
Hmm.
my new favorite is using even a protein flour
Mm.
powder, like a whey protein,
Ah,
and
okay.
that ups the protein as well.
Yeah.
Um, so that is one of people's favorites because all of a sudden, I hate this idea of deprivation. I'm like, I don't want you to feel like you're suffering. So if you
Hmm.
need to have dessert, let's make dessert work for you as opposed to creating sugar cravings that are going to chase you for days or weeks.
Hmm.
It's
Yes.
just, you know,
Yeah, so a lot of times in functional medicine we talk about eliminating, but
yeah,
I like how you are mentioning that eliminating is very hard habit to create. You kind of want to when you create a habit, you want it to be mindless so that you do it all the time. And the best way would actually to be creating positive habits.
right, exactly. But it's so funny because that elimination thing is a big deal, but you can
Mm-hmm.
never say, well, I don't, because I'm coming out with it, guys. I will say, I don't want you to eat grains, but I'm never going to tell somebody, I don't want you to eat grains. Good luck. I'm going to be like, okay, we're not going to eat grains. We're going to eat this stuff instead so that
Yes,
they
yes.
have options. So they
Mm-hmm.
have, one of the things that I share is one of my favorite recipes is my high protein lasagna, and there's no noodles in it, but
Mm.
you use hopefully a high quality deli meat, so either turkey or chicken, thinly
Mm-hmm.
sliced as the noodles. And then the rest of it's
Wow.
pretty much the same. But it
Oh,
is, I have never ever shared that recipe or given it to people who haven't asked me for the recipe. It is so good and it's
yes.
so delicious and so filling. But you know what? You're not having the noodles. You're not having, you don't get a bellyache after you eat it the way you do when you eat a lot of noodles. So
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Or a food coma,
That's me.
from
That
the
would be
sugar. All right. Well, that's great. Where can people find, these recipes, or how do they
so.
the cheat
My
sheet?
the name of my company is The Simplicity of Wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my website. And so if you go to my website, actually, it will take you right into my free mini course. It's a 5-day health and nutrition course where we sort of get into some of these concepts about creating like a super simple habit,
Mm-hmm.
um, understanding how your body uses fuel, stuff. So, we
Awesome.
go through kind of this process at the beginning. I mean, the first thing I ask people to do always is sort of to understand their why, which, and I always say that, and I always think to myself, I'm the person that hates that. Like, I'm like, oh, I just want to get started. Do we have to do all this like internal work? But it's so important because there's this idea of conflicting priorities. So the people that are like struggling to make change, there's something else that you're really liking about the status quo that you're not recognizing. So you have conflicting priorities. So I take you through this whole process of kind of trying to identify, do you have conflicting priorities? What else is it that you really like that's holding you back from making change? And kind of trying to figure that out. It's
All
really,
right.
it's just interesting. But it's important. If you're somebody who's struggling to actually make a shift,
Yes.
there's something holding you in place.
Right. And a lot of times, people think that they're already on the best diets. Like you said, you're eating a lot of vegetables and maybe the good fats, organic, but still the weight won't come off. There's something else underlying that we usually go through, right? Whether it's the hormones or whether it's the gut, and trying
Right.
to make sure those are all doing well. And then the behavioral health portion of the mindfulness and what habits need to be changed is also important in dealing with total weight loss, right? So
Right.
um, what? How I have a lot of people who say, "I just want to lose the weight now," and and we know that that is really not possible. But like, how fast do you see people actually lose weight if they switch to a low carb diet?
So I don't know if we talked about it while we were live or before we started chatting, but we talked a little bit about type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. And my program, so I run a group program called Hangry to Healthy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's 12 weeks because I've discovered working with one-on-one clients that 12 weeks tends to be this amount of time that really makes or gives people the ability to shift. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean you are dropping 20 pounds in 12 weeks. It means that you've now set yourself up for this long term achievement, but also maintenance. So, my clients, but what I see in 12 weeks, I'm sorry, back to the prediabetes, is I have literally helped people go from having all the markers of type 2 diabetes in 12 weeks to perfect labs. Perfect. So people will come to me because their doctor wants to put them on metformin and they don't
Mm-hmm.
want to go on metformin. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so let's fix this so your doctor doesn't feel like they need to, pressure you about the metformin. So
Yeah.
that's typically what happens is they go back, they have their labs done, and their doctor's like, well, there's nothing to discuss because you're not pre-diabetic anymore,
You
which
don't
is
have
so
to do
fun. It's
metformin. Yes.
amazing
Yes.
that. Okay, so the weight loss. So let's see. My 12-week program, I'm trying to think. I said somebody just, I just talked to one of my clients the other day. She's down 15 pounds. And then
Nice.
another woman who's just coming on her 1-year anniversary is down 55 pounds.
Wow.
So, it just depends on the person, but
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people actually come to me who do only like, well, I could lose maybe 10 pounds. And I do kind
Mm-hmm.
of refer to that a little bit as vanity weight, right? Other people don't see it, but
Mm-hmm.
we feel it and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're kind of in that vanity weight place, your body is actually very happy with everything. You can be incredibly healthy, your labs look amazing. You just maybe don't feel, you feel like
Mm-hmm.
you could look better or feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, sometimes you have to be, a little bit stricter. You're gonna have to maybe track what you're eating, maybe do a little counting with your kitchen scale, things like that. But if you're motivated and you don't have a conflicting priority, it can happen and it will work. Um, but it
Yeah.
just, so everybody's a little different. So, but
Yes,
again, I'm not saying you're
definitely.
going to lose 10 pounds in a month.
I know.
I don't actually want to work with you if that's your goal. There's plenty
Right,
of other people out there
exactly.
that you could work with.
Yes, no quick weight loss plan.
Yeah.
But this is about lifestyle changes to make
Yeah.
your insides healthy, right? And
Yeah.
to be able to do it at the root cause. So we're so thankful to have you here, Amy White, as we have learned a lot about how to go from hangry to healthy and how to stop your sugar cravings and how to reverse prediabetes. So if you have liked and liked the show, please like and subscribe and share and stay tuned for our next show on the Dr. Lamb Show.
Thank you.